I watched him take his last gulp of whiskey. I saw his eyes slowly close as he lay back on the bed. I heard his breathing grow slower and slower until it finally stopped. And I just stood there in his bedroom doorway, watching the man who ruined my life cease to exist. What I did to my stepfather was necessary. And if you ask me if I regret it, the answer is no. Not at all. Have you ever screamed the truth and the person who was supposed to protect you the most called you a liar? Have you ever asked for help and been told you were the problem? I have. And that taught me that sometimes no one is going to save you. Sometimes you have to save yourself, no matter the cost. I need to tell this because I can't bear to keep it to myself anymore. Because every day, I see everyone remembering Damian as a great man, someone who died so young. What a tragedy. And I have to nod. I have to act sad. I have to pretend I don't know exactly how and why he died. But you are going to know the truth, the whole truth. And after hearing it all, you decide if I'm a murderer or if I did what I had to do. My name is Kai. I'm 15 years old. I live with my mom in a house we used to share with my stepfather Damian. I say used to because 2 months ago Damian died. Officially, it was an accidental overdose of sleeping pills mixed with alcohol. A tragedy, an accident. That's what the death certificate says. That's what everyone believes. But I know differently because I crushed those pills. I put them in his drink. I made sure he took enough so he would never wake up again. Let me tell you how I got to that point, because I wasn't born capable of killing. I'm not a psychopath. I don't enjoy others' pain. What I did was out of desperation for survival to protect someone else. And when you know everything, maybe you'll understand why I don't regret it. My dad died when I was 9. He worked in construction, and there was an accident at the site. A beam came loose, fell on him. He died instantly. I remember that day perfectly. I remember how my mom got the call, how she fell to the floor crying, how everything changed in seconds. The following years were tough. My mom worked all day as a nurse at the hospital to support us. We lived in a small apartment, barely had enough for the basics, but we were happy. Well, as happy as you can be when you miss someone every day. My mom always said my dad was watching over us from heaven. I believed her. When I was 11, my mom met Damian on a dating app. At first I was jealous. I didn't want anyone to take my dad's place. But Damian was different, or so it seemed. He was super friendly with me. He'd buy me video games, take me to basketball games, ask me how school was going, and he made my mom laugh in a way I hadn't seen in years. She looked happy again, and that made me happy too. Damian had a good job at a tech company. He earned well, took us to nice restaurants, bought us things we couldn't afford before. 6 months after they met, he proposed to my mom. She said yes. I was there when it happened at a beachfront restaurant. I remember everyone applauded. I remember my mom cried with happiness. They got married when I was 12. We moved to a much bigger house in a nicer neighborhood. I had my own large room with space for everything. My mom no longer had to work so many extra shifts. Everything seemed perfect. Damian seemed perfect. For the first year, everything was fine. Damian was still the cool stepdad. He'd let me stay up late on weekends. He'd defend me when my mom got mad at me about something. He'd give me extra money to go out with my friends. I started to see him as a father figure. I even called him dad a couple of times by accident. He'd smile and say it was no problem. I could call him whatever I wanted. But everything changed after my 13th birthday. It wasn't sudden. It was gradual. So gradual that at first I thought it was my imagination. It started with weird comments about my body. Things like, "You're growing up now looking more like a man. Your voice is changing. Soon you'll be quite the ladies' man." Comments that sounded like normal compliments, but something in his tone made me uncomfortable. Then the accidents started. He'd walk into the bathroom when I was showering. He'd say, "Sorry, I didn't know you were in there, but I always locked the door and he had a master key." He'd hug me in ways that lasted too long, that felt too tight. He'd pat me in places where pats shouldn't go. By the time I turned 14, they weren't accidents anymore. He wasn't pretending. He'd tell me we had to go to the gym together, that it would make me strong. And after the gym, he insisted we shower together to save water. Because that's what men do, no shame. I didn't want to, but he made it seem like I was weird for being uncomfortable, like I was the one with the problem. He started coming into my room at night. At first he said it was to talk, to check on me. He'd sit on my bed, ask me questions about school, about my friends, about whether I liked any girls, and then out of nowhere, he'd start touching me. First, my shoulder, then my arm, then places he shouldn't touch, and when I pulled away, he'd get angry. He'd tell me I was being immature, that this is how fathers teach their sons to be real men, that I should be grateful to have someone who cared about me. He threatened me too, never overtly, always subtly. Things like, Your mom won't believe you if you tell her anything. She thinks I'm crazy about her. She'll think you're jealous that you want to break us up. Or without me, your mom can't afford this house. Do you want to go back to that awful apartment? Do you want her to work double shifts again? He made me feel that if I spoke up, I would destroy my mom, destroy our family, destroy everything. So I kept it to myself, swallowed everything. Every night he came into my room, I closed my eyes and waited for it to end. Every time he touched me, I froze. I didn't know what to do. I was a kid. He was an adult. He was my mom's husband. Who would believe me? But it reached a point where I couldn't take it anymore. It reached a point where I thought, if I didn't speak, I would go crazy. So at 14 and a half, I gathered all the courage I had and told my mom. It was a Saturday afternoon. Damian was out playing golf with some friends. My mom and I were alone at home. She was in the kitchen preparing dinner. I sat at the table and said, Mom, I need to tell you something about Damian, something serious. She stopped what she was doing and sat across from me. She asked me what was wrong, and I just let it all out. I told her about the comments, the touching the times he came into my room at night. I told her everything I had kept bottled up for over a year. I expected her to hug me, to tell me she believed me, that she would protect me, that she would confront Damian, that we would get out of there. None of that happened. My mom looked at me as if I had slapped her. Her face went from concern to disbelief, and then to anger. She asked me how dared I invent such lies about Damian. She told me I was ungrateful after everything he had done for us, that I was jealous because she had moved on with her life, that it was probably just teenage stuff, that I was confusing normal affection with something else. I tried to explain. I begged her to listen. I showed her weird messages Damian had sent me, but she read them and said they were just a stepfather trying to connect with his teenage stepson, that I was taking things out of context, that I needed professional help for having such disturbed thoughts. She sent me to my room, told me she was going to find a therapist for me because I clearly had issues accepting authority figures, and warned me never to talk about it again. She said she was ashamed of me that Damian was a good man, and I was being cruel. I locked myself in my room and cried. My own mother didn't believe me. The person who was supposed to protect me had called me a liar. I felt completely alone. When Damian arrived that night, my mom told him everything. I heard it from my room. I heard her apologizing for my unacceptable behavior, how she told him I was going to therapy, how she assured him this wouldn't happen again. And I heard Damian in his calm and understanding voice tell her not to worry, that he understood teenagers go through difficult phases, and that he would be patient with me. That night, Damian came into my room after my mom fell asleep. He sat on my bed with a smile I'll never forget. He said, "You tried to be clever, didn't you? But no one will ever believe you. Your mom is on my side, always will be. So here's what's going to happen now. You're going to behave. You're going to stop making up stories, and you're going to accept that this is how things are. Because if you try anything like that again, I'll have you sent to a reform school. I have connections. I can make it look like you're violent, that you have serious psychological problems. Your mom will sign whatever because she trusts me. Understand?" I nodded, tears in my eyes. He smiled, patted my cheek in a way that hurt more than it seemed, and left my room. From that moment on, my life became an even worse hell. Damian took my phone away as punishment for lying. He isolated me from my friends by telling my mom they were a bad influence. He convinced my mom that I needed strict discipline, so now I had to go straight home after school. No going out. No friends, just school home. And my room, and the damn nights, when he kept coming to my room. But now he did it with more confidence, knowing I couldn't do anything. Knowing no one would help me. I felt trapped. I thought about running away, but where would I go? I thought about telling a teacher. But what if they didn't believe me either? What if Damian made good on his threat to make me look crazy? I thought about suicide. Many times. I wrote farewell letters. I planned how to do it. It was my plan B, my emergency exit if things didn't get better. But then Esra arrived, and everything changed. Esra is Damian's son from his first marriage. He's 12. He lives with his mom in another city, but he visits us occasionally. It was his first visit since I had tried to tell my mom the truth. He arrived on a Friday afternoon. He was a shy, quiet kid, one of those who always look at the floor. Damian was super excited to see him. He hugged him, told him how much he'd missed him, showed him the guest room where he'd be staying. That first night, I noticed something that chilled me to the bone. I saw how Damian acted with Esra, exactly the same way he had with me at the beginning. The same gifts, the same attention, the same comments about how much he'd grown. And I saw Ezra's face, that uncomfortable look mixed with confusion. The same face I must have had when it all started. Saturday night around 11, I heard something, a soft cry coming from the guest room. I carefully got out of bed and went into the hallway. I saw Damian leaving Ezra's room, adjusting his clothes, and walking towards his room, where my mom was sleeping. I waited a few minutes, then gently knocked on Ezra's door. He didn't answer, but I went in anyway. He was curled up in bed, crying silently, covered head to toe with the blankets. I sat on the edge of his bed. I didn't know what to say. How do you ask a child if their father just abused them? But I had to know. I had to confirm what I already knew in my heart. Ezra, I said softly, are you okay? He shook his head, but didn't speak. I asked him if his dad had done anything to him, if he had touched him in ways that made him uncomfortable. He stayed silent for a long time. Then in a voice so quiet I could barely hear it, he said, he always does it. Every time I come, he tells me it's normal, that it's how dads show love, but it doesn't feel right. I felt my blood boil. It wasn't just me. Damian was a serial predator. He had done the same thing to his own son. And how many more kids? I told Ezra he wasn't alone, that it happened to me too, that I understood exactly how he felt. His eyes widened. He asked me if I had told anyone too. I told him I had that. I had told my mom, but she didn't believe me. Ezra started crying harder. He told me he had also told his mom months ago, but she thought he was confused, that he was misinterpreting his dad's affection, that Damian was very convincing, very good at acting, that no one would ever believe us because he was a respectable adult with a good job and a good reputation. We sat there, two broken children, knowing no one was going to save us. And it was at that moment that I made my decision. If no one else was going to stop Damian, I would. I couldn't save myself anymore. The damage was done. But I could save Ezra. I could prevent more victims. I was going to kill Damian. Sunday morning, I tried one last time. I waited for Damian to go out and buy the newspaper. I went down to the kitchen with Ezra, where my mom was. I told her we needed to talk again, that now we had proof that Ezra was also a victim, that this wasn't a lie, wasn't a confusion, it was real. My mom cut me off before I could finish. She told me she was sick of my stories, that she was going to call the therapist to have me admitted somewhere. If I kept it up, that I was manipulating Ezra, that I was a troubled kid who needed serious help. Ezra tried to speak, but he was so scared that he just cried. My mom thought his tears were because I was scaring him with my lies. She sent both of us to our rooms. That afternoon, when Ezra left with his mom, Damian came into my room, locked the door, stood in front of me, with a look I'd never seen before. Pure rage. He told me it was the last mistake I would make, that he had already talked to a doctor friend of his who could diagnose me with severe behavioral disorders, that he already had documentation prepared, that if I tried anything again in a week, I would be admitted to an adolescent psychiatric hospital, and that there locked up, no one would ever listen to me. He left my room, leaving the door open. I knew he was serious. I knew he would do it, and I knew I had to act fast. That night, I started planning everything. It couldn't be obvious. It couldn't look like murder. It had to be an accident, something credible. Damian took sleeping pills. He'd suffered from insomnia for years. He kept them in the medicine cabinet in the bathroom he shared with my mom. He also drank whiskey every night before bed, a religious routine, 1 glass of whiskey, 2 pills, and to bed. I researched online. I discovered that mixing sleeping pills with alcohol in large quantities can cause respiratory arrest and overdose, and with the right amount, it can look completely accidental. I waited for the perfect opportunity. My mom had night shifts at the hospital twice a week. Those nights, Damian and I were alone at home. It was my window. The following Wednesday, my mom left for work at 7 p.m. Damian and I ate dinner together in silence. He acted as if nothing was wrong, as if he hadn't threatened me days before, as if he wasn't a monster. After dinner, I went to my room, supposedly to do homework. I waited. I heard Damian watching TV in the living room. At 10:30, as always, he went upstairs to his room. I waited 15 more minutes. Then very carefully, I went up to my mom's bathroom. I took out Damian's bottle of sleeping pills. I was wearing latex gloves I had stolen from the school's first aid kit. I couldn't leave fingerprints. I went down to the kitchen, crushed 6 pills with a mortar we had for spices. I turned them into a fine powder, put them in a small paper packet. I went back upstairs. From the hallway, I could see Damian's bedroom door ajar. I heard him in the bathroom. Perfect. I entered his room. His glass of whiskey was on the nightstand, still half full. I emptied the pill powder into the glass. It dissolved almost instantly. I gave it a little swirl with a spoon I grabbed from the bathroom to make sure it mixed well. I left his room as quickly as I entered. I returned to mine. I sat on my bed, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. There was no turning back. I heard Damian come out of the bathroom. I heard him get into bed. I heard the clink of the glass as he drank his whiskey. I heard him put the glass back on the nightstand and then just silence. I waited an hour, 2 hours. At midnight, I got up, walked slowly to his room, gently knocked on the door. No response. I went in. Damian was lying in bed, face up, eyes closed. I approached. I put my hand near his nose to feel if he was breathing. Nothing. I put my fingers on his neck, searching for a pulse. Nothing. He was dead. I should have felt remorse, guilt, horror, but all I felt was relief. A relief so great it almost made me cry. But I couldn't cry yet. I had to act. I had to call 911. I had to play my part. I ran downstairs to the living room, picked up the landline with trembling hands. I dialed 911. When they answered, I screamed hysterically. "My stepfather isn't breathing. He's in his bed, and he's not breathing. Please come quickly." I gave them the address between sobs. The operator told me to calm down, that paramedics were on their way to try to check for a pulse. I told her he didn't have one. She asked me to try CPR. I told her I was scared that I didn't know if I could. She guided me, but I didn't succeed. It was important that it looked like I tried to help him. The paramedics arrived in less than 10 minutes. They rushed upstairs to the room. I was in the hallway, really crying now, but not for the reasons they thought. I cried for everything, for years of abuse, for not having been protected, for having had to go this far. The paramedics worked on him for a while. Then one of them came out and told me with a serious expression that he was very sorry that he had died. He asked if there was anyone I could call. I told him my mom was at the hospital, working, that they could call her there. Everything happened very fast after that. The police arrived. They asked me questions. I told them I had been in my room all night doing homework, that I heard a strange noise around 11:30, and went to check that I found Damian unresponsive, that I called emergency services immediately. All true, except for the part about the pills in his drink. My mom arrived around 1 a.m. She was devastated. She cried nonstop. She hugged me and asked what happened. I told her the same story. She was in shock. She couldn't believe Damian was dead. The following days were chaos. Autopsy, investigation, funeral. The autopsy determined the cause of death was an accidental overdose of zolpidem combined with alcohol. The report said Damian probably forgot he had already taken his pills and took more, or that he drank more alcohol than usual. A tragedy, an accident. It could happen to anyone. No one suspected anything. Why would they? I was just a traumatized teenager who found his stepfather dead. And Damian had a history of insomnia and sleeping pill use. Everything fit perfectly. The funeral was surreal. So many people talking about how wonderful Damian was. His boss talked about how dedicated he was at work. His friends talked about their golf games and his jokes. His family talked about what a good father and husband he was. I sat in the front row next to my mom, who kept crying, listening to all those lies, wanting to scream the truth, but obviously I couldn't. If you've made it this far, like and subscribe. I promise what comes next is even more intense. Make sure to click the subscribe button right below the video. You need to activate the bell because every day we upload stories like this. Real stories that no one else dares to tell. Because what happened after the funeral will leave you speechless. 2 weeks passed. My mom was still in deep grief. She cried every day. She looked at pictures of Damian. She said she didn't understand how God could take another love of her life. I had to comfort her, hug her, tell her everything would be okay, playing the part of the devastated son who lost his stepfather. But inside I was better. For the first time in years, I slept without fear, without having to listen for footsteps approaching my room at night, without that constant anxiety of what would happen today. I was free, and even if I had to carry the weight of what I did, it was worth it for that peace. One Saturday afternoon, there was a knock at the door. My mom was upstairs in her room as usual lately. I opened it. It was a woman around 35, with a 12-year-old boy. I recognized the boy immediately. Esra. The woman introduced herself. It was Carla, Damian's ex-wife, and Ezra's mom. I told them to come in. They looked nervous. Carla asked if she could speak with my mom. I said of course I would call her. I went upstairs and told my mom that Damian's ex-wife was downstairs and wanted to talk to her. My mom wiped her tears, tidied herself up a bit, and came down. I followed her because I needed to know what was going to happen. We sat in the living room, Carla and Esra on one couch, my mom and I on another. There was an awkward silence. Then Carla spoke. Sophia, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry to come at this time, but there's something I need to tell you something about Damian that, well, you need to know. My mom looked at her confused. She asked what she was talking about. Carla took a deep breath and then said, Esra confessed something to me a few weeks ago, something about his dad, about abuse. The silence that followed was deafening. My mom turned pale. She looked at me as if suddenly everything made sense. Then she looked back at Carla. What kind of abuse? She asked in a trembling voice. Carla explained. She recounted how Esra had finally opened up to her after years. How he told her that Damian had been touching him inappropriately since he was 9. How he threatened him to keep him quiet. How Esra thought he was alone until he spoke with me that night he visited. My mom started to cry, but these tears were different. They were tears of horror, of guilt, of understanding. Carla continued. She told me that after Esra told her everything, she investigated Damian. She found out that years ago, when Esra was about 7, a child from his soccer team, Damian was the coach, accused him of inappropriate touching, but the case was closed because the child's parents didn't want to pursue the complaint, and there was no physical evidence. Damian convinced Carla it was a lie, a child seeking attention. She believed him. Now she realized it was a terrible mistake. My mom turned to me. Her eyes were red, full of tears, and something else, guilt. She asked if it was true if Damian had done things to me too. There was no point in lying anymore. I nodded. I told her yes, that I had tried to tell her months ago, but she didn't believe me, that everything I told her was true. My mom broke down. She fell to the floor crying, screaming, hitting the floor with her fists. She kept saying, "I'm sorry," over and over. She said it was her fault, that she should have believed me, that she should have protected me, that she was the worst mother in the world. I cried too. Carla cried. Esra cried. We all cried together in that living room, for years of pain, for stolen childhoods, for a monster who got away with it for so long. Carla eventually left with Esra, hugged me before she went, and told me she was so sorry, that she also failed to protect her son, that she would make sure Esra received all the help he needed. She gave me her number, in case I ever needed to talk to someone who understood. After they left, my mom and I stayed in the living room in silence for a long time. Then she hugged me and apologized. She told me she would never forgive herself for not believing me, that she understood if I hated her, that she hated herself. I told her I didn't hate her, that Damian was very good at manipulating, that he had deceived everyone, that it wasn't just her fault. But then she asked me something that chilled me to the bone. "Kai," she said, looking me directly in the eyes, "did you have anything to do with Damian's death?" My heart stopped. For a second, I thought about lying, but I was tired of lies, tired of carrying that weight alone. So I told her the truth. I told her everything. The pills, the whiskey, how I planned it, why I did it, how I couldn't live like that anymore, how I needed to protect Esra, how it was the only way out I saw. I expected her to scream at me, to call the police, to hate me, but she did none of that. She hugged me. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe and said, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I pushed you to that. If I had listened to you, if I had believed you, none of this would have happened. This is my fault." I told her no, that it was Damian's fault, that he was the monster, that we were just victims trying to survive. We stayed there hugging, crying, processing everything. Eventually, she told me that we would never speak of this again, that it was a secret we would take to our graves, that she wouldn't betray me, because she understood why I did it. That although she wasn't proud that I had to go to such an extreme, she understood that I saw no other way out. The following days were strange. My mom and I processed everything together. She found my diary hidden in my closet, the diary where I had documented every abuse, every threat, every horrible moment. She also found the farewell letters I had written, the letters where I talked about committing suicide, because I saw no other way to escape. When she read those letters, she broke down again. She realized that not only had she failed to protect me from the abuse, but she almost lost me completely, that her son was about to take his own life, and she didn't see the signs because she was blind in love with the monster. My mom decided to seek professional help for both of us. She found a therapist specializing in trauma and abuse. We told her everything except for the murder. Obviously, the therapist helped us understand that none of what happened was our fault, that Damian was solely responsible, that both my mom and I were manipulated by an expert predator. Little by little, we began to heal. My mom stopped idealizing Damian. She stopped mourning his death. She began to see him for what he truly was: an abuser, a predator, a monster hiding behind a perfect facade. One day, about 3 months after the funeral, my mom asked me if I regretted what I did. I told her no. I told her I would do it again, without hesitation, because Esra was now safe, because I was safe, because future children were safe. That although I had to become a murderer, I saved lives. My mom said she understood that, although legally and morally, what I did was wrong as a mother, she understood the desperation that led me to that point. That the real villain was always Damian, not me. Today, almost 6 months later, I still live with my mom. We no longer have the big house. We moved to a smaller apartment, but it's better. It's ours. No memories of Damian, no. His presence contaminating every corner. I got my friends back. I started going out again. I got my phone back, my life. My mom and I have a stronger relationship than ever. She really strives to make up for the time she didn't believe me. And although I know she carries guilt, I also know she's doing everything she can to be better. Esra is doing well too. Carla keeps me updated. He's in intensive therapy, but he's making progress. He no longer has nightmares every night. He can now talk about what happened without breaking down. He's healing, and knowing that makes it all worth it. So do I regret it? Was it the right decision? I don't know. Were there other options? Maybe. But at that moment, trapped without help, without options, I did the only thing I felt I could do. I lived in a system that failed me. My mom failed me. The authorities would have failed me too. Because that's how the world works when you're a victim of abuse. No one believes you, especially when the abuser is charismatic, respectable, a good man. So I took justice into my own hands. And although that makes me a murderer, it also makes me a survivor. Someone who said, enough, when no one else would. And you who have heard my whole story, what do you think? Am I a murderer or a victim who did what was necessary to survive? Should I have kept looking for help, even though everyone failed me? Is there justification for what I did? I don't have the answers. I only know that I live with my decision, that I carry that weight, that sometimes I wake up at night, remembering that night, remembering the sound of my heart beating as I put the pills in his drink. And I wonder what kind of person I am. But then I remember the nights I'm no longer afraid. I remember that Esra is safe. I remember that there will be no more victims, and I can go back to sleep. If you are listening to this and have lived through something similar, if someone is hurting you right now, please listen to me. Seek help. Keep searching until someone listens to you. There are helplines. There are organizations. There are people who will believe you. Don't take the path I took, not because it's wrong or right, but because now you will carry that weight forever. And although sometimes it feels justified, other times it feels like a curse. Try all options first. Scream, cry, fight, document. Everything. Record it if you can. Look for teachers you trust. Look for therapists. Look for organizations like RAIN or helplines for victims of abuse. Don't give up. And if all those options fail well, at least you tried to do things the right way. To conclude, I want to ask you something. If you've made it this far, if you've listened to my complete story without judging me prematurely, let me know in the comments what you think. I really want to know. Do you think I did the right thing? Do you think it was justified? Or do you think I'm just a murderer justifying himself? And if you have a similar story, if you need to tell it, share it in the comments or send it to the channel. We are a community here, a community of people who have lived through things no one else understands, and we support each other. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I know it's weird to ask you that after confessing to a murder, but that's how this works. If you want to keep seeing real stories like this, stories no one else dares to tell you, need to click that red subscribe button right below the video and activate the bell for notifications, because every day we upload new content that will make you think. I'm sorry the video was so long. I know it's probably like 40 minutes. But these stories cannot be summarized. They cannot be told halfway. If you wanted to understand why I did what I did, you needed to know every detail, every moment that led me to that decision. Thank you for making it to the end. Thank you for listening to me without closing the video. Thank you for giving me this space to vent, because even though my mom knows the truth, I can't talk about this freely with anyone else except with you through this screen. We are a community of survivors here, of people who have been through hell that no one should go through. People who have to smile and pretend they're okay when inside they're broken. People who carry secrets that are killing them. And if you are one of those people, I want you to know that I see you, that your pain is real, that you are not alone, that you deserve to be heard, that you deserve to heal. You don't have to carry it all alone. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to be angry at the world. It's okay to question everything. And it's okay to survive in any way you can. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you're still here, that you don't give up, that you keep fighting. So stay, be part of this community. And when you have your own story to tell, share it. Because we all deserve to have our truth heard. We all deserve justice, even if we have to take it into our own hands. Thanks again for joining me in this. See you in the next video. And remember, you are not alone, never are. There's always someone who understands. There's always someone who has been through something similar, and together we can heal. Or at least we can try. See you later.